He never forgot about her. But when he walked into a cafe and saw his childhood crush working there, he knew one thing. He wasn't leaving without changing her life forever. The cafe smelled like freshly brewed coffee and warm pastries, a cozy contrast to the cold city streets outside. Daniel Carter, billionaire investor, barely noticed. He had stepped in for a quick coffee, just another stop in his busy day, until he saw her. Standing behind the counter, taking orders with a tired but familiar smile, was Sophia Hayes, his childhood crush. For a moment, Daniel thought he was imagining things. The girl he had spent years secretly admiring, the one who had once been the smartest, most ambitious person he knew, was now working at a small cafe. His heart pounded. What had happened to her dreams? She hadn't noticed him yet. She was too busy wiping down the counter, moving like someone who had been on her feet for hours. Daniel clenched his jaw. This wasn't the life she was meant to have. And in that moment he knew he had to do something. He wasn't leaving that cafe without finding out the truth. And once he did, he was going to change everything. Daniel stepped forward, his heart pounding harder than it had in years. Sophia Hayes, the girl who once dreamed of running her own company, the girl he had admired from afar, was right in front of him. She still had the same bright eyes, but there was exhaustion behind them. Something had changed. As he reached the counter, she turned with a polite smile. "Welcome to Joe's Cafe. What can I get you?" The moment her eyes met his, she froze. Her smile faltered. Confusion flickered across her face. Then, recognition. "Daniel," she whispered. His lips quirked into a smile. "Hey, Sophia." For a second, neither of them spoke. It had been years since they'd last seen each other. She blinked, snapping out of her shock. "Wow, it's been forever." "Yeah," he said, his gaze searching hers. "It has." She let out a small laugh, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "What are you doing here?" Daniel shrugged. "I was just passing by, needed a coffee." He hesitated, then asked the question burning in his mind. "What about you? You work here?" Her expression shifted, just for a second, but he caught it. A flicker of embarrassment. "Yeah," she said quickly, glancing away. "It's temporary." Temporary. Daniel didn't buy it. Something had happened. Before he could press further, a sharp voice interrupted. "Sophia, less talking, more working." Daniel's eyes snapped to the cafe manager, a grumpy-looking man who barely glanced at her before walking away. His jaw clenched. He didn't like that. Sophia sighed. "Sorry, I should—" Daniel held up a hand. "Not yet." She frowned. "Daniel, I don't have a choice." He leaned forward slightly, his voice lower. "What if you did?" Sophia's breath hitched. "What do you mean?" Daniel's gaze locked onto hers. He wasn't just here to catch up. He was here to change her life. And he wasn't leaving until he did. Sophia stared at Daniel, her pulse racing. What did he mean? What if she had a choice? She let out a nervous laugh. "Daniel, what are you talking about?" He leaned casually against the counter, but there was nothing casual about his gaze. "I mean, you're not supposed to be here, Sophia." Her stomach twisted. "And where exactly am I supposed to be?" Daniel didn't hesitate. "Running something, leading, changing the world, not taking orders from a guy who doesn't even respect you." She swallowed hard, glancing toward her manager, who was already barking at another employee. For a moment, she let herself imagine it, a life where she wasn't stuck behind a counter, where she was actually using her skills and talents. But then reality crashed back in. She sighed. "I appreciate the pep talk, but life doesn't work that way. Things didn't go as planned." Daniel's expression darkened. There it was. The truth. "What happened?" he asked gently. She hesitated, then exhaled. "I was supposed to start my own business. I had it all planned out. But after my dad passed, I used my savings to cover the medical bills. Then the pandemic hit. Things just spiraled. Daniel's chest tightened. She had given up everything to take care of her family. Sophia forced a smile. It's not ideal, but it's just a job. I'll figure things out. Daniel's jaw clenched. Number that wasn't good enough. You're done here, he said firmly. She blinked. Excuse me. He smirked. You're quitting. Today. Sophia let out a stunned laugh. Daniel, I can't just... Yes, you can. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a sleek business card, sliding it across the counter. Come work for me. Her breath hitched. You're serious? He nodded. I need someone like you. Smart, driven, someone who doesn't back down. He smirked. And I think you need a fresh start. Sophia stared at the card. This was insane. 1 minute she was making lattes. The next, a billionaire was offering her a new life. But deep down she knew. This was the chance she had been waiting for. And for the first time in years, she felt something she thought she had lost. Hope. Sophia's hands trembled as she picked up the business card. Daniel Carter, CEO. Her heart pounded. This was real. She looked up at him, searching his face. You're really offering me a job? Just like that? Daniel smirked. Not just a job, Sophia. A fresh start. You were meant for more than this cafe. She swallowed hard. I don't know, Daniel. I appreciate it, but I don't want a handout. His expression softened. It's not a handout. It's an opportunity. You still have to prove yourself. Sophia bit her lip, staring at the card. Could she really do this? Then, her manager's voice snapped her out of her thoughts. Sophia, if you're done flirting, there are tables that need cleaning. Her stomach twisted. This job had drained her for years. No respect, no future. And now, she had a way out. She took a deep breath, set down the card, and looked Daniel in the eye. Then she untied her apron and placed it on the counter. I quit. Gasps rippled through the cafe. Her manager's face turned beet red. What did you just say? He sputtered. Sophia smiled for the first time in a long time. I said, I quit. Daniel grinned. Smart choice. She grabbed her bag and walked around the counter, feeling a weight lift off her shoulders. For the first time in years, she was stepping towards something better. As she and Daniel walked toward the door, she turned back, taking one last look at the cafe where she had spent so many long, exhausting days. Then she smiled, because her real life was just beginning, 1 month later. Sophia stepped into her new office, still barely believing it was hers. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a sleek desk, a view of the city skyline, everything felt surreal. She had gone from taking coffee orders to leading projects at one of Daniel Carter's top companies. And the crazy part? She was thriving. She had spent years thinking she had lost her future, that her dreams had slipped away. But Daniel had reminded her who she really was. A knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. She looked up to see Daniel leaning against the frame, smirking. Settling in? He asked. Sophia chuckled. Still feels like a dream. He stepped inside, sliding his hands into his pockets. It's not. You earned this. She studied him for a moment. He had changed her life, but maybe, just maybe, she had changed his too. She smirked. So, do I get to thank you yet? Daniel grinned. Not yet. Save it for when you run this place. Sophia laughed, shaking her head. This wasn't just a new job. It was a second chance, a life she thought she had lost, finally back in her hands. And as she looked out at the city below, she knew one thing for sure. She was never looking back.